Hello, everybody. This is the SIG Cluster Lifecycle meeting. Today is the 9th of February, 2021. I'm going to share the agenda document in chat. Please add your names to the list of participants and your agenda topics. All right. By the way, I added a template here. We can copy paste it instead of copying from the older meetings every time. So for group topics, I wanted to remind that the vote naming has changed for our YouTube playlist. This is the format. SIG Cluster Lifecycle. Optionally, if this is a sub-project meeting, we have a dash in the meeting name, and then we have year, month, and date separated with dashes. And that's pretty much it for the reminder. I see that we already started following this, but in time it's going to improve. Laura, you have a agenda topic?
Hi, yeah. I put a few slides together to make it easier too, but if you want to click, or I can share my screen, or I can just talk about it really briefly. A couple folks I know who are in the call right now know a little bit about this, either because I have talked to you about it before, I saw you at the Cluster API office hours a little while ago, or you commented on a PR that I worked on a while ago. So hello again, everybody. For those of you who don't know, though, I'm from SIG Multi-Cluster, and I'm working on a CUP proposal about cluster ID. So this is, I think, something that has been talked about in the community beyond SIG Multi-Cluster 2 a lot before, but we do need to solve it in SIG Multi-Cluster for some of our purposes. But we also have, a belief, and also some people have mentioned to us that this may be useful, or that they would like to comment on it from other SIGs or from other sub-projects. So I just wanted to say kind of hi and talk a little bit about it, and then make myself available either here, or if you want to catch me on Slack or talk on the pull request, just so that everybody here knows that this is going on. And in particular, in the last slide, for things we want to learn from other SIGs and sub-projects, in particular, is if there's other user stories or user cases outside of what we have already articulated on our CEP draft that differs or is the same, we would love to hear about it. If you can click on 4, actually, I would love it. Thank you. So this first one, if you have a need for this, or think it shouldn't be solved, I guess, too, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. If you're interested in collaborating or getting updates, I would love to know what the best way to do so with this SIG or with other projects is. And then it so happens we also have a survey out for what we should name the CRD that we propose. So consider putting your 2 cents in. Yes, exactly. So there's a Survey Monkey. You can give us all of your feelings.
I'd recommend reaching out to the Cluster API sub-project. They're going to be the ones that would have the most opinions and thoughts and comments. That's a very large group. I don't know if you've had time to chat with them or get on their agenda.
Yes, I went on to their office hours, I think 2-3 weeks ago. I don't know, it's all fading together, but have connected with some of them and hanging out with them in Slack too. So, but did want to come to this broader group just in case there were some other sub-projects or other connections people could make.
I will try to complete the survey. I guess I suggest that others should do the same, pretty much.
That'd be great.
I've already read the CAP. Like Tim is saying, the Cluster API group is probably those who should comment because they're affected by this.
Yeah.
But on this call, I think the survey is a good way for people to provide feedback.
Cool. All right, well, that's all. I just wanted to give a little PSA and make myself available. Oh, and Justin, what's that?
Yeah, sorry. I just want to say I think I like this KEP, I guess, a lot, and I think the other thing which we might have to figure out in terms of cluster lifecycle projects is whether our various toolings like KOps or kubeadm or cluster API, when they create a cluster, should be seeding these values. I don't know whether we have a view on that yet, Laura.
Yes, I don't know that we have a super articulated view. It is coming up as I'm making the KEP implementable, because I'm needing to put in some more details of like, how is this field getting filled out. So I think this is exactly the time where that's going to be discussed. So I'll be shepherding that through SIG multi-cluster meetings mainly, and then also in conversation on the PR. So if you have feelings, those are probably the #1 places to go. And I'm happy to also ping in Slack when there's updates, so that people know without needing to watch it directly.
Okay, yeah, Fabrizio is asking in chat that they should put the survey in the meeting notes. I will do that.
Okay, I can do it too. Oh, you got it. Multitasking.
We'll add a note that people should complete the survey. Okay. And thanks,
Thank you
Laura.
for your time.
So do we have any more group topics, PSAs?
Hello.
Somebody.
Hello, this is Jiawei. Hi everyone. I'm from the SIG storage team. So yeah, I think we do have a topic I wanted to mention, which is regarding the CSI migration. So it's for some background on folks that do not know much about CSI migration. CSI migration is an effort that the SIG storage is trying to drive to. Once enabled, it will redirect all the in-tree plugin, storage plugin traffic to the CSI drivers, so that it will help us to migrate all the in-tree plugins to to the CSI. So this feature has been beta for a considerable long time. It's actually been beta since 1.17, and we're now trying to. But actually, since even if it's already beta, it's not being turned on by default, and there are a couple of other issues that we are trying to fix, and so the current status for that is that we're gonna probably turn it on by default for a lot of plugins on 1.22, and I just wanted to give you guys a heads up, because turned on CSI migration do need one important component, which is the CSI driver to be installed by default. So if there is any Kubernetes installation to, I'm not super familiar with all this like KOps, kubespray, and kubeadmin. There might be more about this, but like I think they might need to take care of the installation of the CSI drivers. I don't know what's the ideal way of the installation story will be, but I think it will be good if we can actually bundle the CSI driver with the cloud provider controller. So yeah, I think that's all. I'm wondering like if anyone has any ideas or any comments.
Fabrizio?
Hi, thanks. So thanks for the heads ups. This is yeah, really important. So I kindly ask you to provide a better, some better information on what do you mean with install the CSI driver, and
Yes.
with regards to the idea to bundle this with the CPI. I think that it is meaningful, but this is in the scope of SIG multi-cloud, if I'm right. What is important also from the installer perspective is to get a proper understanding of the upgrade story. So what happened on an existing cluster whenever this plugin gets turned on?
Yeah, good question. So I think the CSI migration is a feature that are controlled by a feature gate. So it indeed requires a certain component like the CSI driver being installed so that the entry, for example, let's take AWS EBS as an example. If someone is using the entry AWS EBS storage plugin, once we turn the CSI migration on and we upgrade the cluster to the newest version, it will redirect all the traffic from the entry AWS EBS to the CSI AWS EBS driver. So yeah, I mean, like the CSI driver, it's a very strong dependency that we need to take care of. And that should be taken care of when we upgrade the cluster to that certain version. So I mean, like if we upgrade to a version that we turn the CSI migration on, then the CSI driver will be required on the cluster. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, this is the initial answer, because then we have to figure out the detail. For instance, what happened in a cluster which is partially migrated to a new version. So I have some node to one version, control plane, and other nodes to the new one.
Yeah, so this CSI migration has like two phases. So the first phase is that so there are two parts of it. So the feature flag, the CSI migration feature flag, can be turned on the master, which is the kube controller manager side, and also it needs to be turned on the kubelet side. So if only let's say if only the feature gate is turned on the master side, and the node on the kubelet, it doesn't turn on this CSI migration feature gate, then all the traffic will still go through the entry, which is the entry AWS, the entry storage plugin traffic. So only if the node and the master, like all of the components are turned on the CSI migration feature gate, we will then use the CSI traffic.
So I think my request is probably going to be echoed by everybody, is that we really need a set of scenarios and sequence diagrams to know what to do on the downstream side of things. I think there's also your previous statement about bundling CSI with CPI. If I take off my current hat and put on my old red hat, that not every single cloud provider integration wants to use the storage for that provider, even though that might seem that way. So like it is natural for folks to want to use natural or unnatural to use like an overlay storage interface atop of a cloud provider and not necessarily that provider storage interface directly. So I think that I'm a little surprised that someone from Red Hat didn't kind of mention that, the storage SIG. But if they're okay with it, then I think then I'm not gonna really pipe up too much. But I think my previous request of a set of scenarios for particularly the upgrade scenarios, as well as the sequence and order of operations, I think would be hugely useful for us to know what changes we need to make, because we're gonna have to stage this.
Yeah, so I think the main change is that I think for all the main Kubernetes distribution toolset, we will have to install the CSI driver. So I think here I said bundle with the cloud provider. I'm more talking about like for AWS, it should bundle the EBS driver. For GCP, it should bundle the PD CSI driver. For Azure, it should bundle the Azure drivers. But for other clouds, like if they have some specialty, if they have their own different requirements, it might be different, or they can have their own installation story, as long as like the users are happy with that. I think it should be fine. So I think the main issue here is that we should, like, I want to let the folks from the SIG Cluster Lifecycle team know, like this is coming up, and we don't want to surprise you that like you have to install the CSI drivers to use the storage plugins, etc. So if there's anything that we can do like before this happen, like in prepare for the upcoming change, like I'm happy to work with you guys to figure out like what we need to do on this.
So stuff like this that'll affect multiple projects, I think having an umbrella tracking issue and then talking with the other sub-projects to link in. So like having an issue inside the KubeADM repo, an issue inside of the COPS repo, an issue inside of Cluster API repo, and then link it through some umbrella issue, I think would be highly beneficial, because I have the suspicion that even though you're talking with us today, that stuff's going to get lost. And then somebody is going to get the next edition and they're going to freak out. Not that this hasn't happened like 12 times in the past before.
Yeah, I think that totally makes sense. I can create 3 issues in KOps, kubeadmin, and kubespray. If that's the like the main distribution tools that I know. I'm wondering like if you have any other like repos that I need to probably like notify.
Please add to the cluster API repo as well.
Okay.
And also last bit is that this project does not, most of this project does not follow the same Kubernetes release cadence. So it is required also to make some complex release coordination on top of this.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So I think one thing I'm curious about is so since there is another effort in the SIG cloud provider team, like they wanted to extract the entry cloud provider and to install the cloud provider manager, etc. Like eventually the entry cloud provider will be removed, right? So it's kind of I think it's kind of ideally the same with what we're doing in the storage side. So is there any possibility that we can like, I'm not saying like I think firstly, I think from my personal view, we can try to see if we can find an approach to bundle them together. But like if bundle them together is not the ideal model, then we should come up with a model that can like handle this situation. I'm wondering if anyone has any thoughts.
I was going to suggest one of the things we can work on is building an add-on operator. The value of that will be one, I can continue to ramp up professional people using an add-on operator. 2, we can like make very explicit the sequence of operations that has to happen for at least one case, right? And we can sort of get it under testing and see that one case works reliably. And I think we can, I suggest we can like have one which does the cloud provider and the storage provider together. And if people want to replace one or the other, which is something I actually wasn't aware of, then it will at least be a starting point for them. And hopefully we can make it so that they could replace either or both of the manifests or turn them off independently and do one at a time. But I do think we should make sure that both upgrades work. It sounds like both upgrades are going to land at the same time. So we should make sure that both upgrades work at the same time or together. The tricky thing I think is the tricky bit I think is going to be the nodes having to update before that master flag flip. If I understand correctly, that's going to be interesting.
I think it's the master needs to upgrade first, and then it's the node side.
Okay, so the master can tolerate the nodes not having the
yes, exactly.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
that is probably easier. Good. But this is stuff we can figure out with the operator.
Yeah, plus one to delegate this to an operator. kubeadm, I don't think need this at all. It's just a bootstrapper. If users have to install this separate driver, they should just install the operator. This is how I see it. Also, please provide some links to your agenda topic, because I mean, I think I found, is this the CSI migration kip?
Yes, I think this is somehow the older version. I will provide a latest like our meeting docs for CSI migration, which have a whole bunch of details.
Yeah, personally, I would like to also track the Kubernetes enhancement issue and Kubernetes ticket if you have one.
Yeah, sure. I will post it here after offline. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I said, for kubeadm, probably we don't need an issue. For Cluster API, for kops and kubespray, I guess we need one issue for those projects.
Yeah, and also another thing I wanted to mention is that if so this, as I mentioned, CSI migration has two phases. This is the first phase. There is a second phase, which is that if somehow the distribution doesn't want to maintain the in-tree plugin at all, like there is another feature gate that they can turn on, which will just unregister the in-tree plugin, so that the user will have to use the CSI driver instead. If that makes your lives easier, I think that's also a way we can do. So basically, instead of supporting both the in-tree and the CSI, we can just unregister the in-tree plugin, and then so the user will have no choice but to install the CSI driver to use the storage.
It's a runtime option, not a build time, correct?
Yeah, it's actually on the, yeah, it's a runtime. It's a feature gate. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Basically, this comes like a bit of a surprise to us. If you can give us more links and log the issues, we can start looking at it.
Yeah, I'm also a little bit surprised because yeah, I thought this should communicate earlier to you guys, but yeah, I'm happy to provide some more information on this, and feel free to ping me on Slack for any related topics. I'll definitely put more readings and background in this talk.
All right, thanks a lot. Does anybody else have any comments on this topic? Okay, we can move on.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have some project updates now. I added something for kubeadm quickly. Last office hours, we had a meeting discussing the machine attestation, security node identity feature that we want to enhance Cluster API with. we did some gathering of ideas, but I think we concluded that we need a detailed spec to look at and decide what to do, because it was basically the proposal is a bit sparse at the moment. So I think proposal is going to be scheduled for this Wednesday, but I'm not sure if they will be able to create it by then. So the second thing I wanted to mention with the issue transfer 121, no major features in KubeADM. This cycle, nothing particularly interesting. One question I have for the group, which is technically a KubeADM topic, but I want to get some opinions, is that currently we deploy the KCM and scheduler, we bind them to localhost only. So this means that you cannot gather metrics from them externally. So the linked issue is basically created by some Prometheus users who say that we should expose these components on the node IP, the same way we expose the API server on such control plane nodes. They ask us to expose the KCM and scheduler. And I also wanted to mention that we already enabled only the secure port, so they are serving only securely. So the question here, like, should we do this? It changes the topology of KubeADM a little bit. Obviously, we're not going to backport this feature. So what do people think?
It was bound to localhost to avoid an endpoint. So it's a configuration problem because you were routing a bunch of traffic through for the scheduler and the KCM through the load balancer to get around this. So because it was using localhost, it allowed it to just talk with that local API server. So there's a couple ways we could handle this. I believe that topology was solved with OpenShift as well, because OpenShift did the same thing. So we could look there as an example of how they solve that endpoint scraping, but they don't allow random external endpoint scraping. They have this like proxy thing to enable it. So that might be the way we go. But there's a reason why it was localhost.
Okay, Fabrizio.
Yeah, I want to add to the recent list. We recently changed this, probably 1 or 2 versions ago, of kubeadmin, because basically having the controller manager and the scheduler pointing at the same at the API server on localhost makes basically everything in the host consistent in terms of version, and there is less risk or no risk to having unsupported versus queue while doing immutable upgrades. And one example is that recently some API was removed by kubeAPI server, and without this topology that we are using now, we were getting requests from an older kube scheduler redirected through the load balancer to a newer API server, and things were failing. So this topology basically allows immutable upgrades.
Okay, but this is, maybe I should clarify that these components, when they serve, they only have health endpoint and metrics endpoint. That's what they can be served for. Maybe more APIs in the future, but the goal of the components is to connect to the API server. The serving problem is something else. Justin?
I just want to say, on the first topic, you mean tomorrow it's going to be discussed probably in the office hours, the cluster API office hours?
Yes, potentially.
That's cool. I'll try to structure that because we do have something in KOps. I don't think we love it, but it can maybe help. And on a similar note, we actually added a proxy in KOps for the health Z endpoint for API server. So we have something we could also like contribute, collaborate on somewhere for, you know, some sort of like very limited scope proxy that can enforce some of this stuff. Sounds like OpenShift might have something similar. I don't know if GKE, I think GKE might use Envoy, which I think is probably a little heavy for what we want. But so I think we might have, I'll try to attend tomorrow, but in general, like there are, I think, proxies that we have elsewhere. And if a proxy is helpful, I'm happy to collaborate. It's also not that much code if you just want to start again.
I see. So yeah, we could, I can see that we can do this as something like a proxy. Basically, what I'm gathering from the meeting is that we probably shouldn't do this only because of the metrics. Like, it's not that much of a security hardening argument. It's just if somebody wants it, they should just use something like a proxy, and that's it.
The other nice thing about a proxy, the other nice thing about a proxy is we could probably run it as a pod and have it appear as a Kubernetes service. So if I don't know if people are typically running Prometheus in cluster or out of cluster. And I don't know if there's a trick to get that to happen anyway. But depending on the use case, a proxy might, a pod proxy might have an advantage.
I guess the alternative is to run a daemon set that is able to scrape on these nodes via localhost. Maybe.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with how the scraping side is typically set up. The Prometheus side, as it were.
Yeah, and to be clear, also something that I outlined in the issue is that Kubedium already supports configuration for this, so you can potentially use patches to bind to the node IP. So it's like a if nobody is saying that we should just do it, I think we should just say that people have so many alternatives and we shouldn't do this by default.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I recalled how we did this in the past. You can change your deployment to basically install a proxy. If I'm deploying Prometheus, if you want to grab that stuff. So like there's multiple ways you can do this that doesn't require defaultly changing our default deployment. Just because there's limited benefit for a non-Kubernetes user grabbing the KCM and scheduler matrix. Like a Kubernetes developer, it's highly useful, right? Like, so when we did this stuff in the past, we would install those proxy agents because we would run profiling on it. But when you're actually a consumer, the API server endpoint matrix are totally still accessible, and you will get vast majority of better information to diagnose most user-specific errors.
Yeah, I agree completely. It's like it feels like probably more than 80% of the user base will not care about metrics for these components. So the feature request is a bit of a stretch. There are alternatives. I'm going to mention that we discussed this during this meeting. I can close the ticket with this argument. All right. Thanks a lot. Any more questions or comments for Kubedium? Okay, moving to COPS.
Yes, nothing particularly across project cross project interest. We did release our 1.19.0 release. We always intended to fast follow with the 1.19.1, and it turns out we're going to need that. We missed a couple of things. Nothing critical, but certainly things that justify that. And we're going to try to do 1.20 much faster than we did 1.19, and basically, catch up or come closer to being on our preferred delay again. That's about it.
All right. Any questions for COPS? Fabrizio?
If you want, I can give a quick update about CAPI. So the main heads up for the broader community is that we are trying to close proposal for V1 Alpha 4 iteration. And so if there are many works going on in parallel, and if you are interested to catch up, please take a look at the meeting tomorrow.
All right, any questions for Cluster API? Cool. This is all we have for today. Any final topics or questions for the group? All right, thanks everybody. See you again in a couple of weeks. Bye.